Alright, so paper one is actually coming up in a few days. So I'ma bang out theories and methods for this video. Also, in my past video, I went through education for paper one as well. So go check that out if you haven't. If I remember to, I'll put a link for it in the description. If I don't, just go on my channel. It's not that hard. But yeah, I'll get into it. Alright, for the first slide, you got difference between quantitative and qualitative data. So quantitative data is more numerical data represented as numbers or stats, yeah, and it can be easily generalized to form a law of behavior, right? It's used by positivists who aim to find patterns and test hypotheses. So basically, it's more like data with numbers and statistics, whereas qualitative data is more like wordy data, like verbal, more descriptive. It goes more in depth and it tries to look for the deeper meaning in qualitative data. For qualitative data, yeah, is used mainly by interpretivists who focus on understanding social action, which we'll get into more later. But main difference you need to know, quantitative is more with numbers and it looks to see patterns in behavior, whereas qualitative is more verbal and just looks to go deeper in to find a deeper meaning. Alright, next slide is actually pretty straightforward. It's just the difference between primary and secondary data. So primary data is basically just data collected firsthand by the researcher for a specific reason or purpose. So usually they'll conduct that data just to solve their research, right? Examples of this are interviews and questionnaires. And a pro of this is that the data will be more relevant to the research as the researcher is only creating the data to solve the research. A con is if you're creating your own research, then it could be very time consuming, right? Secondary data, right? This one is just data that's already been created, so data previously collected by someone else. Examples are government statistics, and pros is this isn't time consuming, it's quick, it's cheap, you don't really have to invest much, yeah. Cons is that it may be outdated, and because it's not your research, it might not be that relevant to the current research. Alright, then you have the theories. Alright, so the first theory is consensus theory. So the key idea behind this is society is based on shared norms and values which maintain social order. Basically saying that we need those norms and values for society to function, right? They believe society is stable, harmonious, and held together by agreement. So they have a pretty positive outlook on society and how it's run, and they believe it's working. Main examples of this are functionalism, e.g., Durkheim, who's a key advocate for this, and Newright, right? Their preferred research methods are quantitative methods, such as social service and structured interviews. So as I said before, right, I mentioned positivists before. This would link with functionalists because a lot of them are usually positivists, yeah, and they have high reliability because they try and look at like a wider scale approach of it. You know, as I said before, they try and see patterns in behavior as positivists do. So they have good reliability, generalizability, yeah, and objectivity. I'll get into what those mean more later on. Then you have conflict theory, right? Which these guys disagree quite a bit compared to consensus theory. They say society is made up of groups in conflict, often due to inequality and power struggles. Yeah, their view on society is, as I said, very different. It's more unstable. They believe society, how it's run, is pretty negative, marked by tension. They believe people in society are oppressed, da da da, you know. Examples of this are Marxism, they believe in class conflict, that's what society causes, and feminism, who believe society and how it's run just creates gender inequality. Their preferred research method is more mixed, right? They could go for quantitative or qualitative, right? They like field experiments, official statistics, but also unstructured interviews, and they often choose to expose inequalities and highlight exploitation. Then one more theory that I couldn't fit onto the last slide, I fitted onto this one, is social action theories. I wrote down Max Weber because he's a key advocate for this. Alright, so the key idea is that it focuses on the individual's actions, meanings, and interactions in shaping society, because it believes that that's what gives everything meaning. So view on society is that it's constructed from the bottom up through everyday behavior. So everyday behavior that we do ourselves is what has made society what it is today. Basically saying that we have made society what it is. Examples of this are symbolic interactionalism, basically meaning, right, how individuals create shared meaning through interactions and symbols, which then influence their actions and social reality, right? Their preferred research methods. Alright, so these are the guys I mentioned before that like looking at deeper meanings, right? So they like qualitative methods, like unstructured interviews, where the conversation can go wherever and they just get a deeper meaning, right? I don't know if I said it before, I think I did, but Max Weber, yeah, just remember him for this, for social action theories, and that's about it. They emphasize, no, actually, no, they emphasize validity, right? Because they can get the deeper meaning, they can get the true picture, which is something positivists can't really get, right? And yeah. Alright, so in the next slide, I actually talk about a few things that said I was going to talk about later on. But before that, there's a little diagram over there that kind of gives an outline on how research is conducted. So you can look into that as well. So when conducting research, sociologists must think about five key things. Reliability, which I mentioned before, which is basically whether the research can be completed again in the future and give similar results. Yeah. Then you have representativeness, right? The extent to which the sample used in the research represents the overall population. So, if research is conducted but it only represents a small group and not general population, then that would not be very representative. Alright, generalizability is pretty similar to representativeness. It's the extent to which the findings can be applied to the target population. Okay, not completely similar. It's more like if you do research on a specific group, but for some reason it doesn't target that specific group, then that would not be very generalizable. Generalizable, yeah, that one. Um, Validity, yeah, whether the research provides a true picture for what is being studied. So, yeah, as I said before, positivists and their research might not be high in validity because they don't look at the true picture. But whereas interpretivists, there might be because they try and look for the bigger picture. Objectivity, basically just meaning is the research like not have any bias? So is there no bias and is it a completely fair research basically? Alright, so next slide is all the key research methods you need to know. I'm not gonna pretty much talk or over explain the table because it's pretty self-explanatory, and I did explain most of the terms before, like reliability, validity, but there are a few that I did not talk about, so I'll talk about them. First one is covert. This just means research in disguise. So, for example, if a researcher is pretending to be a gang member in disguise just so they can get specific research on that gang. Over means open research, so it's not like undercover or nothing. So over, just link it with open, leads to more open research, that's how I remember it. Hawthorne effect, right? This just means, right, when subjects act different, so the subject that's being studied might act different once they know they're being researched. And guys, you can link all these strengths and weaknesses to education, or like majority of them, you'll be able to link them to education. such as a Hawthorne effect with students, like students may act different, Uh, and the last one I'd say is informed consent just means like the subject may not fully understand the full nature of what they're consenting to, which also could link to school. Like students may not fully understand what they're consenting to. So you can link a lot of this to education, which you will need to do in the paper, likely. So just preparing you for that. But that's about it. Also, guys, if I was too fast with that slide again, just go back and screenshot it. But next one is positivism v interpretivism, which is like something you definitely need to know about, like the difference between them. So to start off with, positivism assumes society has objective social facts, meaning society is unbiased and completely just objective. Yeah. Interpretivism believe reality is constructed by individuals, so they believe it's more subjective and society and reality is different to each individual and how they interpret it themselves and what they do about like we create and change society, whereas positivism thinks society is the same for everyone, objective. Next one, society exerts influence on its members, right? Uh, and then interpretivism would say our actions come from personal meanings, not just external forces. So what I said before about controlled, not controlled. Positivists use quantitative data, interpretivists use qualitative data. Positivists again say research is objective and value free. Again, none of that bias. Interpretivism research is subjective, therefore having their own bias, and as it says, shaped by the researcher's understanding. So they think research should be affected by the researcher a bit. Next one, positivists say researchers should remain detached from subjects, whereas interpretivists, or they don't actually have a comparison point with that, but they take a micro approach and focus more on individuals, whereas positivists look at big groups, right? So positivists they focus on reliability, consistency, and replicability, and they prefer questionnaires, structured interviews, and experiments. But interpretivists focus on validity, getting an in-depth, truthful understanding. So yeah, as I said, these guys try and get the bigger picture. So that's why they focus on individuals more, right? And their methods that they like are unstructured interviews, ethnography, and participant observation. And that's about it, guys. The key points you're going to need to know. Alright, so the next slide is research methods linked to education more clearly. I know I said before with the other research methods I mentioned that you can link those to education, and I did kind of show how to, but I just thought I'd specifically add this one so you guys can actually see it and get confident with it so you'll be able to do it as well. I'm not really gonna talk this one out either because the points I've made are pretty clear, self-explanatory. You guys, I'll just leave it up for a few seconds so you guys can just screenshot it and then we'll move on to the next slide. But yeah, pretty much that's it. You guys will be able to use these to link it to education, as you can see. And yeah. Alright, so the next slide is actually a key one. It's problems when conducting research, which I was meant to talk about it early on in the video because of how important it is, but I forgot to, so might as well do it now. Alright, so firstly, you gotta know the difference between the three types of theoretical issues, ethical issues, and practical issues. And guys, you gotta know the difference between them because they might ask a specific question on just one of them. Ethical issues, I went through them already. Does it give a true picture? Reliability, can it be repeated again, give similar results? Representativeness, is it representative of you by the population? And then, yeah, methodology perspective is just like what perspective is the researcher got, positivist or interpretivist, and is he open with trying a different one, for example? Yeah. Ethical issues, right? Informed consent, I talked about. They go understand the full nature. Confidentiality, they might want it to, remain private, anonymous. Obviously, participants can't be harmed. Exception, you can't really trick the participants, right? And the participants do deserve a right to withdraw as well. That's another ethical issue. So you can kind of grasp the difference between ethical and theoretical. Practical is more literal, like actual literal problems. So time and cost, you can see those are actual issues. So like these are more real life problems that you got to think about then and there. So yeah, some methods are more expensive or time consuming. Access, gaining access to certain groups, e.g., like gangs, elite professionals, can be difficult. Skills of the researcher, you got to put that into if the researcher is skilled enough to conduct the research. Funding, obviously, that's an issue. Who's like actually paying for the research to be done? And subject matter is sensitive topics may limit what can be studied or how. And that's the main ones, to be honest. And you guys should just know the difference between them. But yeah, that's about it. All right, and the next slide is just comparing modernity with postmodernity. So again, this is not a slide I really have to talk about or explain. It's pretty much clear, and it's just more one you guys need to memorize. So I'll keep it on the screen for a few seconds so you guys can screenshot it and just memorize that. All right, and the final slide I'm going to talk about is the difference between objectivity and subjectivity, which I already feel like I have talked about quite a bit today, but I'll do it one more time just to run it through and make it more clear. So, objectivity obviously based on observable, measurable facts, free from personal bias or emotions, right? They're more neutral and consistent. Positivists prefer objectivity, and they use more statistical data for stuff like measuring crime rates, for example. Now, subjectivity, complete opposite, based more on personal feelings and opinions or past experiences rather than observable, measurable facts, right? They're influenced more by individual perspectives. So these are actually do have more personal bias, and researchers let their emotions control their research more with subjective research, right? They try and understand meaning more, look for like the true meaning of stuff. More common with interpretivists, as mentioned before, and they explore personal. An example is exploring personal experiences of crime through interviews. And those are the main differences, guys. Alright guys, so that is the end of the video, and I hope this info and knowledge is useful to you. This is basically the key stuff you're gonna really need to know for theory and methods. So if you know this, generally I feel like you should be good for the exam, yeah. So just watch this, maybe go through it like once or twice more, and yeah, you should be good, but yeah, that's about it.